Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. This is the show where we answer your questions about the movies, TV shows, Celestials, and more. We're going to answer all your hot celestial questions this week. With me, as always, is Roxy Stryer.
I thought you were going to say was the celestial Roxy
The
Stryer.
celestial Roxy Stryer. I mean, if you were celestial, you would not fit in the room you're in right now.
You don't know that. Maybe I'm a shape-shifting celestial.
Maybe you are.
I invented a new character.
Boom. I do have some questions because we were introduced to another celestial in a Guardians movie that doesn't look like the other celestials, and I do have questions about that.
Totally true.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get into it. Listen, we're going to get into full spoilers. But as always, you can watch this show early on patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. You can also watch my show with Sal from Comic Pop Spider-Versity. We're watching the Spider-Man movies. You can read this on the iTunes. You can answer our Spotify questions. There's a ton of stuff you can do. But listen, we got a lot to talk about this week. And before we get into Eternals, Roxy, I did want to ask you about real quick about Spencer, which is a movie you saw. You weren't able to talk about it last week. You're now able to talk about it. This is Kristen Stewart as Princess Di, and I believe it's the same director that did that Jackie Kennedy movie with Natalie Portman.
Oh, is that true?
It is now. I just said it. There's no way to find out.
I'm going to find it out. Let's see, as she slowly types Spencer into... You know what's funny is that I didn't look at anything about this movie. It's Pablo Larraín who did the Jackie movie, which I saw.
Yes. And I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yeah. I don't think that he was right for this project.
And elaborate on that.
And I don't think that I think that this project was severely hurting by the fact that it was both written by a man and directed by a man. And
how so? How could that possibly be true?
So, all right. So let me rewind. I saw Spencer. It is the new Princess Di movie. It takes place over a couple days of her life. So it isn't a grand movie. It is a Princess Di slice of life movie.
That tends to be how I like my biopics, is where it's not like, hey, here's the entirety of their life.
Yeah. But where we cut in and where we leave requires an extreme amount of previous knowledge on Princess Di that some people may or may not have.
I probably won't.
If you do not have any knowledge, what this looks like is not a Princess Di story. It looks like watching a woman go nuts.
Oh.
And now I understand why people think that the reports are saying that anybody close with Princess Di is saying that she would be mortified by this movie, that this would like crush her soul, that this is how she's being portrayed. And I get why. She in this movie is being portrayed as like just like kind of a nightmare.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, whoa, what am I watching? Like you see, you feel for her at times, but really it looks like you don't know why she's like this. You don't know how she got like this. You just see that she's mad.
Okay.
And it was, I had a really hard time watching this movie, which I was not expecting. As you know, I'm not that into the royals, but I watched The Crown. I like that. Yeah. I had a Princess Di Beanie Baby growing up. Why I got rid of that, we'll never know. I think it's worth like $500,000 or some shit at this point.
Whoops.
There is a lot of love for Princess Di. I also have always had a soft spot because I feel like my mom looked so much like Princess Di. People used to say to my mom one of two things: you look like Meg Ryan or you look like Princess Di. So I just always, like, when I look at her, I'm like, Mom. I don't know. I've had a lot of love for Princess Di, and I as everything's come out with Meghan Markle, you just think about a time period in which things were not as public, and this woman was fucking suffering.
Yeah.
Now, what I walked out of this movie with, what the first thought I had in my head was, wow, rich white people problems. And like, I actually don't think that's Princess Di's story, but that is definitely how I felt based on this movie. It's really pretty. It's really slow. It really like lives in every moment. It lets every moment breathe, and sometimes that works. Kristen Stewart is excellent.
Unsurprising.
She makes an excellent Princess Di. She really invests in the character, and while 5 minutes in, you're struggling a little bit with like, this is Kristen Stewart in a wig. By 15 minutes in, you're no longer struggling with that, and you just are watching Princess Di. So that was really good. There are some incredibly sweet moments between her and William and Harry in the movie that make you make your heart sing. Yeah. There are a few lines from the kids that made me hysterically laugh out loud. They really got that these were children and not just people who are going to be prince and king and stuff. Like, they were kids.
Yeah.
And so that really worked. I was unclear on everybody else's position. Other than the kids and Kristen Stewart, I was like, who's on her side? Who's out to get her? What are these things? Like, what's happening here? I don't know what their take on her husband is. I don't know what their take on the kitchen staff is. I don't know what their take, like, what are these people thinking of her? It was people's motivations and people's thoughts were really unclear to me. And it was the first thing I said, not looking at this beforehand, and I honestly didn't even look at it afterhand. The first thing I said walking out of the movie after thinking to myself, rich white people problem, I turned to Dorina and Steph and I said, this was obviously written and directed by a man. And I'm not somebody who believes that men can't write and direct women. Yeah. If men didn't write and direct women, guess what? We would have had no women on screen for the last fucking 80 years. Yeah. So I think that some men have a better understanding in the same way that some women have a better understanding. Sometimes it works, but like when you have no checks and balances in this system, I was just like, woof. The music is phenomenal. Yeah. The performances are great, but this story is tough.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like a really fair criticism. I remember liking Jackie, but I'm hearing a lot of what you're saying from other people as well. So we'll.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like I've been hearing mixed things from. I guess I've only heard from a couple people, so I don't know. Who knows what the general reaction will be?
Yeah, what was interesting about this movie too, DJ, is that there are the two different kinds of screenings in LA. There's those big screenings that we do that are at those big movie theaters that everybody goes to. Yeah. And then there's the screening room screenings.
Yes.
That are like 20 people.
That's how I saw Uncut Gems.
Right. Yeah. And this was a screening room screening. Yeah. I didn't think it was going to be that way. I thought Spencer was going to be a big movie. And now I kind of get why they're doing this like this. Yeah. This was a really tough watch. Watching it, I felt really icky.
Ooh, that's not good. That's not good. Well, let me tell you about a movie that I definitely didn't feel icky about. Did not feel icky about. Okay. I enjoyed it very, very much. Real quick, because I know we got to get in all the Eternal stock, but I did want to mention that I saw The French Dispatch this week, which is the new film from Wes Anderson. It is technically like an anthology film because it's broken up into 3 stories, and it's kind of his love letter to the New Yorker magazine through a fictionalized version of it called The French Dispatch. It's got a lot of the classic people he's worked with before and a lot of new people. We got Benicio del Toro, Adrian Brody, Tilda Swinton, Léa Seydoux, Frances McDormand, Timothée Chalamet, Alina Cowdery, sorry for pronouncing that wrong, Jeffrey Wright, who is in all the actors in this are great. Jeffrey Wright's fucking incredible. He's part of The Last Short, and Bill Murray's in it, Owen Wilson's in it, and this
is nuts. Keep going.
This movie leveled me, Roxy. This movie, this is one of those. It was a good example, I think, of the way certain movies speak to certain people, and I could see other people, not necessarily not enjoying it, but not speaking to it in the same way that I felt. Like, I think if I told people like, oh, I left this movie crying, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's like, because of what it was communicating and where I'm at right now. And like, well, all those things converged into a really emotional, profound experience for me. And I really enjoyed it.
What's the basic premise?
So the basic premise is that Bill Murray's character runs this newspaper called The French Dispatch. that it's like a Kansas paper, but it's in France. It's like, whatever. That part confused me a little bit. The summary is a love letter to journalists set in an outpost of an American newspaper in a fictional 20th century French city that brings to life a collection of stories published in the French Dispatch magazine. So Bill Murray's character is the publisher. At the beginning of the movie, he's passed away. And so these stories that we're seeing are supposed to be stories that are published in the last newspaper of the paper he was publishing.
Okay.
And so one of the stories follows a Benicio del Toro's character, who is a painter who's incarcerated, but like his paintings are hugely influential and widely beloved. The middle chapter is a story told by Frances McDormand's character as she follows kind of a youth revolt movement, and I think it's like 70s Paris, following Timothée Chalamet's character. And by the way, if I'm being candid, Timothée Chalamet didn't leave a huge impression on me in Dune. He's fucking great in this. Like it's like, oh, you can play a person. That's fucking great.
Did you see Beautiful Boy?
I've not seen Beautiful Boy. I've not seen Call Me by Your Name. I think the only other Timothée Chalamet thing I've seen him in is Lady Bird, and even though he's good in it, Lady Bird didn't really move the needle for me.
Yeah, Beautiful Boy is what, and I saw Call Me by Your Name, but Beautiful Boy is what, when I was like, oh shit.
Okay.
This guy can act. Like, holy shit. Yeah. He's like good.
Well, and this is a lighter, more comedic role. This is a comedy. So this is a Wes Anderson comedy. And so, and I could see people being, and the final story follows Jeffrey Wright, who is following a story about a Paris cop whose kid is kidnapped, and it's just one of Wes Anderson's little caper stories. And I can see people being turned off by, Wes Anderson's affectations. They don't bother me because it doesn't feel like, if you've seen a Wes Anderson impersonator and then you see a Wes Anderson movie, it's like, no, this is just the way it's like watching a David Lynch movie or something like that. This is just the way his brain works. He's not trying to be cute. This is just this is just what interests him. You know what I mean? And so it's genuine. What got me is because we're following these stories and these writers and their stories and the stories they're trying to tell, what the movie ends up being about, at least my perception of it, is what it's like to be a writer and processing the reality of the world. These are people writing for a paper, so they're following, and we're following the writers following the story. So they're trying to digest and understand and disseminate the story that they're seeing and they're experiencing. And so it becomes a lot about what, at least to me, what it means to be a writer, which is a way of kind of understanding the world that you're in and sharing that with people around you. Just like any art, you're just trying to share an experience with people and get beyond the facts of it to the truth of it. So there's a point at the end where Owen Wilson says something about another character and they're like, is that true? And he's like, mostly. And it's like, well, yeah, because we get so hung up on like the fact of a thing, but what's the truth behind it? And so as somebody who writes and somebody who's part of that experience and somebody who's really struggling to figure out how to process the world around them, that meant a fuck ton to me. That really fucking meant a lot. And it fucking wrecked me. It really spoke to me. And I could see people not having that same experience, but I was very grateful to have this experience with this movie.
I'm grateful for you. I want to see it.
I do recommend it. If you're turned off by Wes Anderson shit, maybe don't see it. But if you're into that, if you've liked Royal Tenenbaums, Isle of Dogs, any of his other movies, highly recommend. Really enjoyed it. And so, yeah. So that's what we're into this week. We're going to cut to an ad break. And when we get back, we're going to give you all the goddamn fucking eternal spoilers you want. You better have seen the fucking movie. We are back. Roxy, are you ready for eternal spoilers?
It still sounds like we are farmers every time. We are back. I am ready for eternal spoilers. Spoil away.
What's crazy is I don't even know I'm doing it.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
So, again, I said it before the break, this is spoiler time, and we're getting into the movie. So if you haven't seen it, go see it or whatever. We're going to spoil it for you. So the movie opens with I'm going to say it, probably a too long opening crawl. It was set is like, it starts with like in the beginning, and then there's like a paragraph, and then there's like this negative space, and you're like, okay, this is done. And then another paragraph comes up and you're like, all right. And then you're like, another paragraph, and you're like, oh my God, how long is this opening crawl going to be?
I feel so differently than you do on this one,
Really?
DJ. Well, as you know, I am kind of blind, remember? From when we used to do the show together,
Yes.
and I couldn't read anything. I also am partially dyslexic. And so reading takes so long for me. This was the first time something's been on screen that I was like, this is a good pace.
Fair enough.
A good pace for me. But also it is weird because I know Star Wars takes from Dune, not Dune taking from Star Wars. But I haven't seen an opening crawl like this that wasn't Star Wars.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And I think that's what it's trying to evoke. And I think that's the thing that distinguishes it is an opening crawl. It's not like, because normally you see like an opening text, like a paragraph,
Right.
like, hey, here's what you need to know. It's like, no, this is a
Crawl.
This is a thing we're going for. And just to keep things succinct, essentially, what the Eternals understand of their mission is they are sent to Earth to destroy the Deviants, which are monsters, colorful monsters, who they're all CG, but I thought the designs of them were pretty cool.
Really cool.
And at some point, we see them straight up nuke a bunch of, just decimate a bunch of deviants with early man. And we understand that they've been on Earth fighting deviants for a long sort of time. We flash forward to present day London, where apparently the deviants are not a problem anymore, and the Eternals have split up. Cersei,
Can I ask you my first question?
please.
I'm sorry, DJ.
No.
This is a big one that comes really early. Everybody wanted to know. They put it a little bit in the trailer. Why didn't the Eternals help out with it when the Thanos thing was going down?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the explanation we get is that they are told that if it is human related, that they should not, and they should only interfere when there are deviants involved.
Yes.
I thought Thanos was a deviant. Did I get that wrong?
We're going to get into that because it is, in the comics, he is an Eternal with the deviant gene, which is why he looks the way he does. In the movies, with what we understand of what we find out about Eternals and deviants, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay. So, because immediately when they said it, I was like, I accept what you're saying, but I don't understand it.
And there's also a reveal in the after credit sequence that confuses things even further. It's like, whoa, we're going to have to unpack this a little bit. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay, but that's what while you mentioned deviants,
we got to get it in there. No,
yeah.
I totally get it. We're introduced to Cersei, who we find out Sprite is living with her. We're introducing to her love interest, who's Jon Snow, who's playing Dane Whitman, who is Black.
Jon Snow,
who was Black Knight in the comics, and we get a tease of that. She gives him like a ring with the classic Black Knight symbol on it. And they want to move in. She doesn't want to do it because she's fucking immortal. And he has a very, I think it's, in some ways it's grown worthy because it's the franchise interjecting in a movie you're watching. But if you lived in the Marvel universe, it is a very, and you're dating what we later discover as an Eternal, it's a very fair question. Hey, are you a sorcerer? Because I know Doctor Strange is a thing and weird stuff has happened around you. And also you live with an Eternal child who goes by the name Sprite. So I'm just, you could tell me if you're a sorcerer.
I thought that was really interesting how chill they were about it, because I was like, oh yeah, he lives in this world in which he knows things exist.
Yes.
It's not like me asking my boyfriend, which I don't have, but if I did, are you a sorcerer? And like really thinking that, like, he's like, there's like some truth behind it.
100%. Like if this were in another movie, it works here. It works here because, like you said, it's like a wizard helped save half. We live in a world where half of the universe vanished. Anything's possible. Fuck it.
Totally. Totally.
I want to see a little aside where somebody asks that, like, is just dead set convinced their significant other is like a superhuman, and they're just not. They're just for some reason they got it in their brain. So before long, a deviant shows up. Icarus shows up. Richard Madden, who and this deviant has healing powers, which is an ability we've seen Ajax, Selma Hayek's character, exhibit in one of the flashbacks. So like, there's trouble in paradise. And this creates some tension between Cersei, because Cersei's dating Dane now, and Icarus is her past flame, which again, props to Dane for being so chill. Like, oh, you were with your last boyfriend for thousands of years.
Yeah, totally.
But listen, he rolls with it.
I have love triangle questions for you, but we can get there.
Okay. I also think, I don't know if you felt the same way, Roxy. Icarus is a challenging character for a good half of the movie. And he basically shows up and might as well have a sign that says, I'm up to some shit on.
Yeah, for sure. But I liked that. I thought that they did a really good job with this character, actually.
Yeah, he's got some big up to some shit vibes. So they decide they need to get the band back together. They go to a farm, I think, in Dakota, where they find Salma Hayek's body, Ajax's body. She is dead. There's a little power ball in her throat that allows her to communicate with Celestials that goes from her neck to Cersei's neck, and the Celestials are fucking huge. That was something I really appreciated, that they really committed to, like, no, these are planet-sized monstrosities.
Yeah, 100% on that. At this point in the movie, DJ, are you thinking that Salma Hayek is dead from a deviant?
I thought we were going to reveal that the deviants were, like, Ajax had turned into a deviant.
Okay.
I knew that, like, Icarus was up to some shit and there was something going on there. That, I knew that there was another shoe waiting to drop.
Yeah, but you didn't know what the shoe was.
I didn't know what the shoe was. And this is the part of the movie. This first half of the movie was where things weren't quite clicking for me. But it all ends up kind of mattering. The next stop is Kingo, Kumail Nanjiani's character, who's a part of he's kind of created his own Bollywood acting dynasty, playing the great-grandfather, grandfather, father, son. Which, by the way, this is also where we meet Kingo's valet, Karun, who ends up kind of being our human stand-in. And it's such a fucking smart choice. That character is such a great addition. And having him
so lovable.
He's great.
He's not annoying.
Exactly.
It just works.
I think that I get the sense that this was a decision. They had the actor, they had him in a few scenes, and they're like, oh, this guy should be in more of the movie.
Yeah. Like, they cast him for literally just the Bollywood stuff. And then they were like,
Well, and I can see a version of the movie that would have decided that Dane is our human perspective. And I think that's a much weaker choice. I think this was because this is very much just a dude.
Yeah. Totally.
And he adds a lot to the movie, but we'll get into that more. So we get flashbacks throughout. The two biggest ones, I think, are, and you can correct me if you remember differently, I think it's Babylon, and then there's one later that's somewhere in South or Central America.
What I know is that Dorina turned to me and said, "My people."
Okay.
So Mexico adjacent.
Yeah. There's some colonialism going on.
Yeah.
And I will say both, and again, because I said in the past episode, I kind of compared this in Dune in my brain. Both are dealing with colonialism. This movie is much more nakedly anti-colonialist. Like, that is what this movie is fucking about in a lot of ways. So in Babylon, we get a lot of Cersei and Icarus's backstory. They get their groove on. We get our first MCU sex scene, and it's fine. It's fine.
I was excited about this. I really thought that Cersei and Icarus had fire chemistry.
Really? I did not feel that.
Wow. I thought that they had fire chemistry to the point that I'm struggling with Cersei and Dane.
Interesting.
I felt like they were lacking that intimacy. And I could just see, I felt like Richard Madden had like such an infatuation with, or Icarus had such an infatuation with Cersei.
I get it.
That this was like fireworks for me. So I loved this moment. Yeah.
So we flesh out that story a little bit. And then the other main flashback we get is in South America, where they've at this point, it's centuries later, they've already apparently gotten rid of all the deviants. And some major colonialism's going on. The Spanish are destroying native villages, and this is interesting, and we'll get into more later. But Druig's basically like, listen, I can just, because they all have different abilities. So Cersei's matter transmogrification or whatever, she can change matter from one thing to another thing. Icarus gets Superman powers; he can fly, laser eyes, super strong, all that shit. Athena can create weapons. Druig's thing is he can mind control people, and so he's basically like, I should just mind control these people so they stop murdering each other. And they're like, we can't interfere. And at this point, Athena is having brain problems and is attacking people. And they say it's because of living forever causes brain problems, which that tracks actually.
What was the term they used?
I don't know. I'm assuming it's from the comics, but it was one of those like we don't need this. We can just say she's having brain problems. I don't know if we need a term for it.
I liked it. Whatever it was, I was like, "That's clever." Okay.
So anyway, at this point, they break up. The band breaks up. They go their separate ways. This is where everything kind of falls apart. And we, in the present, we go and get Thena and Gilgamesh because Gilgamesh goes with Thena to the Australian outback. I like the relationship. I don't know. Did you see it as romantic? Because I saw it as more of like almost familial. But I liked Thena and Gilgamesh's relationship with each other.
I thought that when Thena describes why he did it, that I was like, oh, this was not a romantic thing. This was like a duty obligation. Like, this is what you do for the people that you love.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't get romance vibes.
Same. And also, the actor that plays Gilgamesh is also in Train to Busan. He's fucking great in that movie. He's great in this movie. I love him.
He was really good in this. I like this because I'm a big fan of boy-girl non-sexual relationships on screen. We don't see them, so I really didn't get like that sexual. I really got like I'm gonna have your back because it's the right thing to do. Yeah,
totally. And I think it's smart too because we do get at least 2 other instances of inter-eternal romance situation. So it's like, well, we don't. I mean, I get it. Who else are you going to make out with? But like, it doesn't need to be everybody.
Totally.
So they pick them up and they go to what is seemingly the same Central American, South American culture from the Spanish invasion, where Druig is still mind controlling that village. And I think this is, for all the talk of, well, we shouldn't interfere, I thought this was the greatest illustration of why that's not a good thing. And I actually think it pertains to a question that was raised at Midnight Mass of like, well, if God's good, why doesn't he stop bad things? Because it's like, well, okay, if we're talking about extra human entities intervening, you're basically saying, do you not want bad things or do you want free will? Because the solution, it's literal in this sense. Druids literally controlling their minds. But if you're talking about an extra human entity enforcing their will on humanity, you're talking about one of 2 things. And one of it's, you don't have free will anymore. You no longer have the option to decide what is good or not good for you. Somebody else is making that decision for you. And you're also talking about essentially another form of colonialism. Like that's not like if the Eternals, they don't really touch on it, but it's like if Dane was like, well, why didn't you interfere in any of the other stuff? And Cersei could have just looked at him like, oh yeah, because whenever an advanced culture enforces their will on a less advanced culture, it turns out great. You're British, Dane. Tell me how that's worked out globally for y'all.
Yeah, completely. I felt for Druig's character here though, because what a burden to have the ability and know that you can't use it, but keep having to, he has to decide that every day.
Yeah.
And then like, sometimes he's like, actually, I'm just going to fucking do it.
Yeah. I think they did. You talked a lot in the last episode about how much you like Barry Keoghan. I think he does really good in this role. And I think Druig, I have a little question. The way his powers are utilized or not utilized later, I have some questions about, but I think the way they use this character and the way he plays the character is really smart.
Yeah, agreed. And I liked his, speaking of little love relationships with Makari, I thought that was a cute little, like, possible. Did you get those vibes too? Yeah.
Totally. And also, I don't blame him. She was also in, she's also like a
Walking Dead.
She's been Walking Dead, but she's also in Sound of Metal.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen most of the things that she's been in, and she is really phenomenally talented and super duper endearing, and exactly why we should cast deaf people for deaf roles instead of casting people who don't know, because like 100%. you can tell this woman is like so naturally in her skin, and she's not, that's like part of her day to day, and so we're watching it. It just really worked for me.
Yeah, she's great. And Makari's a standout in this movie in general. Just, I really like that actress, but also the character's a standout in this movie. So this is where we get, things get interesting because the Cersei now finds out that the truth of the situation, that apparently Arishem, Big Daddy Celestial, originally created the Deviants to keep other predators from snuffing out nascent sentient life. But the problem is Deviants evolved, and so they then became the predators to not humans, but other sentient life. And so then he created the Eternals, which can't evolve, can't change, are constant, are essentially glorified robots, is the impression we're led to believe, to keep the Deviants in check. And we need sentient life to grow because I guess that's what feeds primordial celestials, and there's a celestial called Tiamat that's supposed to be born out of Earth, wiping out all Earth life. And that is what the Eternals' whole job was, is to help this gestating Eternal. Yes, Roxy. You in the back.
This is where my biggest question came in. So the movie very clearly states the reason that this celestial is able to be birthed is because we finally got enough people on the planet.
Yes.
Remember the time that the Eternals didn't interfere with the person who got rid of half of the planet?
Yeah. Oopsie doodles.
So I'm confused. If that was their whole job, that was the biggest flub I've ever. I'm not understanding then how this couldn't have been a you should interfere moment.
Yeah, you could argue that they maybe didn't know in Infinity War, but in Endgame one of them should have shown. Maybe they got dusted in Endgame. Let's say that. Let's say they didn't know what Thanos was up to in Infinity War, because things are happening pretty quick over there, and then they got dusted, so they weren't able to do anything about it in Endgame.
What do you mean they got dusted?
They got snapped out with the other half of the universe.
Eternals?
Listen, it was random. Thanos is very big on it being random.
It was random for the people. I don't think he can. I don't think that Thanos can dust an Eternal.
We don't know
And none of them are going to say that. None of them are going to. We're never going to reference like, oh, that time that all of us were dusted.
Yeah, but I do feel like that's whenever Marvel needs to explain why a character wasn't around for Endgame, it's like, oh, because they were dusted.
Yeah, it just doesn't fully somebody tweeted at me before I was giving spoilers, when I wasn't giving spoilers, and they said, does the explanation they give for why they didn't help with the Thanos situation make sense? And I said, not fully, but I accept it.
Yeah, it's very much just a hand wave, like, hey, don't worry about that.
I was just like, okay, I guess, but you literally now are telling me the reason it's time for the Celestial is because there's enough people.
Yep.
But you didn't interfere when half the planet was going away.
Yes, that is a problem.
Okay.
That is a problem, yes. And I think this is a good moment for us to go on an ad break. Here it is, the ad break. All right, we are back from the ad break, and now I'm gonna kind of skip through some of this stuff because we're running tight on time. They basically come up with a plan that Druig is going to use his mind powers to put Tiamat to sleep before it can get birthed, which requires them to get Brian Tyree Henry as Phastos, who implies that he is somehow involved in the nuclear program. A lot of the stuff with Phastos, like he's like, listen, guys, I invented a steam engine. It's like, what do you mean you invented? You're in a spaceship. You should have had to go through like old stuff. Like, oh, I guess this was a thing back then. Phastos is the Eternals' involvement with humanity, and with Phastos in particular. Like, did they give them technology? Did we come up with our own? Whatever. It's it's a little murky.
Yeah, it was more, I think, for comedy. Like, okay, fine, the plow or whatever. But I was like, all right, okay, yeah, sure,
whatever. But so Phastos after Hiroshima is boo humanity. But in that time, he's found his peace with it in a relationship, and it's a gay relationship. And again, this is another moment where the movie's kind of like effortlessly inclusive. When they introduce Thea as a husband, I'm like, fine. But it's not like we're going to see the two smooch, because I've seen these Marvel movies. I know how they work. And credit to this movie. They do smooch. And will it probably edit out of international release? Probably. But listen, take what you can get. Like this is, to me, this is significantly more meaningful than Loki being like, maybe I'm bi, wink. Like, it's like, oh no, you fucking committed to it. Good for you. I
agree. I did have questions here though.
Yes.
None of my questions revolve around him being gay or queer. None of my questions revolve around the kiss, all that stuff. I was like, fuck yeah, I love this. Here's where my questions revolve around.
Yes.
He's like, no, my family's the most important thing and always will be. And I'm like, you've been here for 7,000 years. They are a blip on the radar.
Yes.
Like you've probably been with this man for what? 5 years?
Maybe. Yeah. Let's be generous and say like 10.
10. They're going to be gone in what? 50 years?
Yeah. So
I was just thinking to myself, like, it's interesting to me with how much the with Gemma's character and Kit's character.
Yeah.
Even though she kept saying she like loved him, I felt like he was kind of like a blip on her radar, and she was kind of playing it like he was a blip on her radar, as opposed to Brian Tyree Henry, who's playing it like this is my everything. I'm like, dude, what? Like, he's going to be dead soon. And you're going to just keep being here for 7,000 years.
In his defense, they are raising a kid. So that probably adds to it. But yes, that is a question. That is
it was fine. And I was just like, whatever. I don't even care about this because good on you, Marvel, for finally showing a gay relationship where they actually fucking suck face because guess what? That's what happens.
That's what happens. And also, I will say this. The other thing I liked is, and we don't really spend a lot of time unpacking it, but I think a lot of people have probably dealt with some more nihilistic feelings that it feels like Phastos is dealing with after Hiroshima, and finding. I like the idea of this character being so focused on advancement, but finding peace in the simplicity of family. And not that necessarily everybody needs family, but that idea, that human relationship. What matters is less is what you build and what you do, as opposed to the relationships you create.
What happens in that one moment in which we find out that he's actually been using his powers because something about the walls?
Huh?
I was super unclear.
That he used his powers to make the home like a safe house.
Okay, so that's what, and we figured that out because we tried to like laser the walls or something.
And there was like a shield or something.
Okay.
Yeah, Phastos' powers, his powers are possibly the most confusing because it's like technology.
Yeah. Totally.
So anyway, we get the group together. We find Makari in their spaceship. Again, love that actress. Think she's great in this role. And now it's time for people to like determine sides. And we find out that Icarus knew what was up. The reason that Crow, I think it's supposed to be Crow. Crow's like the main deviant in the comics. I'm assuming that's this deviant that took Ajax's powers, took Gilgamesh's powers. Gilgamesh at this point has been killed by Crow. Icarus knew what was up, took Ajax to where I guess some deviants were frozen in ice, and they're not now. Basically fed her to them, and his team. We need to let Earth die to get the Celestial, because the way it's presented is Celestials are the creative force in the universe. So all life in the universe basically stems from the Celestials. So if you don't let a Celestial be born, you're possibly damning billions of lives from billions upon billions of lives to never exist. And this, we talked a little bit about this in the last episode, that. The movie respecting characters' decisions. So Icarus decides to go protect the Celestial from to be born at the volcano. Sprite, who we find out has always had feelings for Icarus, but because she's in a kid body, can't do anything with him, goes with him. And I kind of thought this was like like she's playing him. Nope, she's Team Icarus. And then Kingo also says, like, listen, Icarus is committing violence. I'm not going to fight you guys, but I agree with him, so I'm just going to bail. And I don't know.
He was my favorite choice of all of the choices because I was like, I hear him.
Yeah.
And he's not going to fuck with his friends, but at the same time, he's like, I can't help you guys.
And I don't know about you, but I kind of thought like, well, sure, but he's still going to show up in the third act to help save the day. No, he's out. Once he's out, he's out. And it's like, I really respect the movie for that.
Yeah, me too. Because like, while putting him in might have caused more powers and more like excitement, like, oh, he showed up. I like that this man was like, I don't think what you guys are doing is right, but I'm not going to stand in your way. This is the decision I made.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, they still go back to him and like they have a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where we're at in life right now, where we don't have enough people who don't agree, but are like, I'm not going to fucking murder you for it.
Well, and this is the other thing where like people that didn't connect with this movie, I feel like, especially for American audiences, should be able to relate to what if the system that you grew up in and were actively a part of is inherently bad and detrimental. And how do you unpack that? I feel like is a feeling I can relate to at least.
Totally.
So of course, this all leads to a big smackdown, primarily with Icarus and the rest of the Eternals. Although Athena kind of gets her own fight with Crow, which I'm going to be honest is the only time I have some technical problems with the movie. This was my only time that I felt like they dropped the ball. Like we do spend some energy humanizing the deviants a little bit, and so I feel like it's smarter to have Crow work with them. For that felt like that's what the movie was building towards.
I thought that that's what it was building towards as well.
This is one of those things where I feel like there's a version of the script where Crow is the bad guy, and then they determined Icarus is interesting bad guy. But then they just did both. Where like Athena's fighting Crow and we're fighting Icarus. It's like this is weird.
Crow and we're like, why are you on Team Icarus? And he's like, because, and then says something that I was like, I still don't get it, but okay.
Yeah, it's just one of the, and they're like, we can't have him take Icarus's power. I'm like, sure, but I feel like the Crow's big issue is like, hey, I don't want deviants to keep being murdered, and then the Eternals are like, hey, we should stop murdering people. So it's like, it feels like, I get that he killed Gilgamesh and Ajax, but it feels like fundamentally y'all are on the same side.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I didn't know his name was Crow until you just said that, by the way.
They don't mention it in the movie, and I'm guessing that's supposed to be Crow. Crow is what it is in the comics for the lead deviant, and I'm assuming that this is the same character. I could be incorrect. This fight with Icarus fucking rules. It is so fucking cool. And I know watching this, I'm like, oh, Chloe Zhao should have directed Justice League.
It was really cool. I think that they did a really great job of like telling us what their plan was and then visualizing that plan in a way that was still like, holy shit, that's so cool. And I like that it wasn't like we're waiting for that one strong Eternal to kick in here. Mm-hmm. Everybody was kind of doing their part. And that was interesting. I definitely struggled in the third act with Sprite's character, but everybody else I was like really on board with.
Well, and I also had some questions about, like, we do a lot of like, Druig's going to put the Celestial to sleep. Not once does anybody go like, hey, Druig, can you just mind control Icarus for just a hot second while we... we do our thing. But the whole fight, specifically Makkari versus Icarus, is just so visually fucking cool. It is essentially Flash. It's like, it's Flash versus Superman, and then you've got Phastos, who's kind of functioning like a cyborg character, and then Thena's got Wonder Woman vibes, Justice League vibes flying all over the place, but it fucking rules. And if they don't do another Eternals movie, and DC's looking to do a Justice League 2, Chloe Zhao should be call number one they make. At least it would be for me. If I'm a Warner's exec, I'm like, oh, Justice League 2, she's our first call.
Yeah, she's very good.
So. Through a gobbledygook we don't have time to get through, essentially all the Eternals are linked. That superpower Cersei's abilities, that now does she not only transmute inanimate matter, she can transmute organic matter, and
which we had seen a little bit of with the tree earlier on.
Yeah, cool. We established a little bit earlier, and so essentially they all are able to pause everything enough, the whole fight with Icarus and everything, to link up. And I like the little moment. Icarus's character was challenging for me for the first half of the movie. When we get to his motivations and like the scene that they give him after he lets Ajax die, suddenly he clicked into place. And it's like, oh, I get this guy. He's interesting. He's our antagonist, but he's interesting. I like him. And I like the moment where he's going to try and stop Cersei from stopping Tiamat. He can't because of his affection for her, which deals with all their themes about sacrificing for the ones you love and all that stuff.
And it felt realistic to me. It felt like the only thing that's going to stop him is seeing her in this moment. Like, he can't take her out. He cannot do it.
Yeah. And by the way, cool fucking visual. I don't know how the planet is still alive, but cool visual with like the Celestial's hand coming out of the water, really, and a little bit of his head. And I love that that's now just part of the geography of the MCU. Like, that Celestial Island, it just exists somewhere.
You remind me of Planet of the Apes in that moment, honestly. Yeah. But yes, definitely. I think that's cool. Then we see it on the news and stuff. Is your understanding that Icarus is dead?
Great question. I feel like they leave it ambiguous. He does fly straight into the sun, but we don't
too close to the sun, some might say.
Yeah, but we don't see him, and I also don't know. I mean, they're Eternals, so like we do see two Eternals die in this movie, but like, I don't know.
Does he get reset and sent back down? Like,
because that's the other thing. We established that they're robots, and the implication when Cersei finds this out is that there's copies of them. However, information we get later is that different types of Eternals exist.
Right.
Which leads us, as we go to the after credits, the day is saved. The Eternals, Icarus flies into the sun. Sprite, because Cersei's powers are still boosted just enough, she's able to turn Sprite into a human, which I
didn't understand that part.
It's a little easy. I do give it we have established that her powers are transfiguration or whatever. She can change stuff, so that's fine. I think also functionally it makes sense, because if you want to do more of these movies, that actress is going to start to age, which is going to be confusing.
Totally, but I just thought she was going to like immediately start growing. Like, I thought it was going to be like a Poison Ivy Gotham situation where like And so I was like, what's happening? I'm not seeing it. By the way, that young actress is very good, though.
Yeah, she's very good. Well, and we also see her create an illusion of her as an adult. So I also thought, like, is she just going to turn into that person? It's like, oh, no, she's just a kid now, which considering she's like 1,000,000 years old, it's like, oh, that fucking blows.
Yeah. Totally.
What a horrible time to start being a human. Anyway.
Go to school.
And then... That's a nightmare considering all she knows. Anyway, Dane is about to drop some serious expositional backstory on Cersei when Escharum shows up and it's like, I'm gonna judge now. And he takes, I believe it was Cersei, Phastos, and Kingo away, leaving Sprite behind, I guess, because she's human now.
Yeah.
Setting up the sequel. And meanwhile, the other Eternals are out in space, which is where we pick up with our first after-credit sequence, the mid-credit sequence, where the Eternal, so it's Makari, Kingo, and Thena are in space. They are not able, it's been weeks since they've been able to contact their Earth siblings. And Pip the Troll, iconic comic character Pip the Troll, shows up, voiced by Patton Oswalt, and he is introducing Thanos' brother, Eros, played by Harry Styles, which I was bummed I knew about that ahead of time. It would have been cool.
I did not know about that ahead of time and could not have cared less.
My impression, Roxy, is that Eros is an Eternal. He's wearing a similar uniform to them. He's just an Eternal from another world, right?
I have no idea. No idea. He shows up and I was like, is this because of everything that happened on Loki? Or is this because of everything that's happening here?
Yeah, so he comes up and he's basically like, I know where your siblings are, right? That's the hook.
I think so.
Okay. So I do have questions, and you raised them earlier. The impression I get is that he's another Eternal, which leads me to believe that there are other types of Eternals, not just copies of these ones. Mm-hmm. But also, he's Thanos' brother. So is Thanos a robot? What the fuck is Thanos' deal now? What am I supposed to understand is Thanos' deal?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're going to address it.
I feel like...
Is that what he said? Does he show up and he said... What is his actual words when he shows up?
I don't remember his actual words. Pip says, this is the brother of Thanos. And everybody's like, Thanos. And he's like... and this is also confusing because his name is Eros, but he goes by the codename Star Fox. I just get rid of that and call him Eros, but whatever. And he does this whole introduction that he's done all this great stuff. But they confirmed that he is Thanos' brother. Yes.
Why does he look like this?
Like a human, because he's an Eternal. I think the bigger question is why does Thanos look the way? Yeah, why does Thanos look that way? Because you can't just say in the comics it's like he's got the deviant gene. In the context of what we understand Eternals and deviants are in this movie, what the fuck does that mean? Like,
right? I don't know.
Also, question: we see throughout the movie, we see a bunch of other Celestials. They all essentially look fundamentally design-wise similar. What's Ego's deal? Was he just like a stillborn? He never quite got out of the planet. He's just the planet now.
Is there any other way for them to be born other than the planet then? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And also, how does that pertain to his goals in that movie? Also, interestingly enough, because how we deal with Tiamat, I guess this movie is pro partial birth abortion because he's, Tiamat's on his way out. And they're like, no, bye-bye.
Oh, that's interesting.
They kill a celestial baby.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean... the Thanos stuff is my biggest questions of the whole film, but I don't know that it's enough to deter me from liking something. I'm just kind of like, this doesn't really fully make sense. Maybe they'll explain it at some point. Maybe they won't.
Because it doesn't matter to this movie. It is tough because, again, it's all part of the bigger Marvel superstructure. But the Thanos question doesn't derail this movie. It's just a bigger universe question.
Can you talk to me about the next
scene? So the post-credit scene.
So this I know nothing about and want to do some reading on it because I was like, he's who?
Yeah, so Jon Snow plays Dane Whitman, who's a character called Black Knight, who is part of a legacy. There was a Black Knight in, I think it is related to like Merlin and King Arthur, medieval times, right? Mm-hmm. Where instead of getting Excalibur, he gets something called the Ebony Blade, which there's been a few different iterations of. The most recent one, it actually feeds off of the negative feelings inside. It's the person that wields it, and it makes it more powerful. And Dane Whitman's been part of the Avengers. He is a love interest of Cersei in the comics. They were actually was
Icarus a love interest of Cersei's in the comics?
I think maybe.
Is the point that I'm going to have to get on board with her and Dane?
Yes.
Well, that's a bummer.
Because Icarus flew into the sun, literally.
Yeah, but I liked that.
So I guess what he was about ready to drop is that, and at the end of the movie, was that he knows his history because he just says he has a complicated family history. He opens this crate which has the ebony blade in it. I thought the ebony blade looked really cool. And when we show that it is implied in the comics that the ebony blade is alive-ish, and we get a sense of that too because he reaches for it and then like there's like a black residue on it that starts moving. It actually looks pretty fucking cool. And here's the part that confused me, and I've heard two pretty compelling answers to this question. There's a voice off camera that fundamentally says, correct me if you remember differently, is like, are you sure you want to do that? That's essentially what the voice says. And I was like, well, who you recognize the voice. It was like,
are you sure you're ready or something like that? Yeah.
So when we left, friend of the show Adam Plavik was in the screening with us, and he said he thought it was Jeffrey Wright who plays the Watcher in What If, and I think that's the argument that makes sense to me. Although, why is he interfering anyway? The other one, I obviously doing a new show with Sal. He thought it was Mahershala Ali as Blade because in the comics Blade is British, and which I think could also work. But how was he there? And is it just like
I don't
are they
know
just
anything
sword
about
buddies?
The Watcher, so I don't know enough to know. But it felt like in the screening that we were in, it felt like everybody knew who it was based on like, oh, and then afterwards I'm talking to people and nobody knew who it was. And I was like,
it was probably that excitement, like, oh, we're going to reveal who it was. And then it cuts to black and like, oh, I feel like this is going to be, by the time this goes live, because we are pre-recording this, I think there'll probably be like Marvel will reveal who the voice is. Watcher makes more sense to me. The Watcher's deal, at least in What If, is he watches multiple universes and just keeps track of their stories. He's not supposed to intervene, and I feel like him asking Dane, like, what are you doing, is him intervening, so that raises some questions.
Serena said to her it sounded like Samuel L. Jackson, which I don't know how that would be, like, how that would work here.
Yeah, and I feel like we're kind of taking Sam Jackson out of that role now. Like, that's not...
But maybe, I don't know.
I feel like the Watcher makes more sense.
I have to hear it
again. I feel the same way. I feel like the Watcher makes more sense because he can just appear places. He's magic. He can just show up wherever he wants. Any normal, tangible person, it's like, ooh, how are they in that room? How'd they get in the room? And I know Blade and Black Knight were on a team. Dane Whitman were on a team together. Beyond that, and them both using swords, I don't know why Blade would involve himself in this particular thing. But that's where we end up. We do get a thing at the end that says the Eternals will return. Roxy, before we go, do you think we'll get an Eternals 2, or do you think we'll have to wait to see Eternals in other projects?
I definitely think we're going to get an Eternals 2. Having a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes won't make a difference if it makes money. So we'll see how it does in the box office. What do you think, DJ?
Do you think I think you're right. If it does well, do you think it's going to do well in the box office? Because we were hearing, with some people not being interested in seeing it before. But I also don't know what not doing well at the box office looks like now.
Yeah, me too. Especially like Dune is apparently slaughtering the box office, and it was also on HBO Max. This is only going to be available in theaters, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to do well.
Good, because I would actually like to see more of these characters. And I think the setup for this gets me excited to see, like, are they going to go toe-to-toe with Celestials? Because that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I also think that with this, after seeing this movie, it's like, oh, they should just make Galactus a Celestial. Like, seeing Arishem at Earth, it gave me like mad Galactus vibes, and I think it would just streamline stuff. And it even says Arishem's like, I'm going to judge this world. Maybe he judges it not worthy, and he sends Galactus in like a Fantastic Four movie or a crossover or something.
Mm-hmm. I could see it.
Yeah.
Yep. Good pitches.
So that's what we got. Any final thoughts, Roxy?
No, I liked it. I really liked it.
Remind the kids at home where they can find you.
Everywhere at Roxy Stryer.
You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can find the show everywhere that matters at Only Stupid Answers, but on Twitter.
You ain't got the vowels from stupid.
That is it from us. Let us know what you thought about Eternals, and we will see you all next week. Bye, everybody.